Hello children, the title of the chapter is The Rise of Nationalism in Europe. Children, during 19th century, nationalism emerged as a force which later on led the formation of the nation states in Europe instead of multinational dynastic empires. As you know, in 19th century, Europe did not have independent nations or independent nation states. A landed aristocracy was the dominant class in European continent. They owned estates and properties both in countrysides and towns. Due to the Industrial Revolution and industrialization, new social groups came into being. One is working class population and the other one middle class population comprised of educated professionals, businessmen and industrialists. The idea of national unity became popular among educated liberal middle classes. Children, in our last video, we were discussing about the age of revolution in Europe from 1830 to 1848. This is also reframed as the revolution by educated middle class in many European countries or European continent. This was the discussion in our last video, how the middle class people took the initiative to bring out some changes in Europe. So these were the points we discussed in our last video. For today, we have taken up this particular concept. So I have brought to you. This is about 1848 revolution by the liberals in Europe. You can call it liberals or educated liberals or educated liberal middle class people in Europe. So there is a standard question framed from this concept about what were the social, economic and political ideas emphasized by the educated liberals. And the same question can be asked in a different manner. What do you know about the 1848 revolution by the educated middle class or educated liberals in Europe? This is the question. 1848 revolution by the liberals in Europe or social, economic and political ideas emphasized by the liberals. So I have prepared a few basic and important points which would be mentioned in order to fetch you 5 out of 5 or 3 out of 3. This question can be asked for either 3 marks or 5 marks. So point number 1, children, point number 1, it says, as I mentioned before, in Europe, the so-called educated middle class people, a special class emerged in 19th century, and some of them were educated, some of them were business people, and they felt that the countries in Europe could be reformed. There were no nation states, only the empires were existed. So the revolution in Europe was basically led by educated people, so-called educated middle class people, and also the educated middle class liberal people. As you know, the system of government was changing gradually in Europe, especially in France. The republic was formed in France based on male franchise. First, male members were given opportunity to vote. Later on, things changed. All male members, then female members. So whatever we see as part of universal adult franchise, that did not come in one day. There were struggles to make universal adult franchise. So gradually things were changing in Europe. In France, a republic was formed based on a male franchise. That means the male members got the right to vote. Point number 2, children, you can mention, according to the liberal middle class people, so-called liberal middle class people, so socially they felt, or liberalism meant, the meaning of liberalism was abolition of discrimination. Abolition of discrimination based on birth and special privileges. As you know, in France there were 3 estates, 3 different categories of people, how 2 estates people enjoyed, and so-called middle class liberal people in Europe did not want any kind of discrimination which was based on birth. They did not want any special privileges to be given to some group of people. So point number 3, children, you can mention, economically, on economic front, what did liberalism mean? So liberalism meant freedom of trade, freedom of markets, abolition of state-imposed trade restrictions and barriers. As you know, the people, especially business class people, did face a lot of difficulties because the state, the emperor, in a dynastic rule, in monarchical form of government, the monarch imposed a lot of trade restrictions. So business class people, they did not have much freedom about the trade. So according to the so-called middle class people or liberal people, so economically they meant there should be a freedom of trade, and the state, the empire should not impose a lot of restrictions. Okay, that should be a free movement of goods. So third point is about liberalism according to economical point of view, then social point of view also I mentioned. The fourth point, children, you can mention about politically, liberalism meant, or liberalism was about formation of government or an independent nation by the consent of people, by parliamentary principles, abolition of autocracy, freedom of press, freedom of associations, etc. So these educated middle class people or liberal people in Europe, they were looking for a different form of government. They were influenced, they were inspired with so many philosophers, and they wanted a kind of government which should be governed by the people. They wanted a kind of parliament where representatives, people's representatives would be taking the decisions. And they did not want autocratic, monarchical form of government. And they obviously wanted freedom of expression, freedom of individuals, freedom of press, and freedom of associations. So all these basic points, children, you are supposed to write. The question is about what do you know about 1848 revolution by the liberals in Europe, or middle class liberals in Europe? Or the question can be asked in a different manner. What were the social, economic, and political ideas emphasized by the middle class liberals or liberals in Europe during 19th century? So these 4 points, basic points, children, if you write, and you will definitely get full mark. This question can be asked for 5 marks. If you get this question for 3 marks, you need to mention also all these points. You can also mention, even for 5 marks, you can mention all these points with your explanation. The first point talks about that how the middle class people took the initiative. Okay. And the middle class people wanted abolition of special privileges, the abolition of discrimination in the society, and so-called liberal middle class people who wanted the freedom of business, freedom of trade. There should be no trade barriers. And at the same time, the liberal nationalists or liberal people or educated middle class people in Europe wanted a different kind of government. They did not want the monarchical form of government. They wanted the government, the parliamentary form of government, the government formed by the consent of people, where there would be freedom of individuals, freedom of press, freedom of associations. So these are the points, 4 points, children, you are supposed to write to get a full mark. And this question was also asked in board examination for a couple of times. Children, I hope that you have understood this particular concept. I will bring something else from this chapter in my next video. Please do not forget to like my video and subscribe my channel. Thank you, children. Bye.